We live in a tiring industry. We work every day on challenging, ever changing things. There's a plus, which is, oh, wow, is it always so interesting? But, when I started, I had hair, just saying.
Hello and welcome to Not Just Ads. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been waiting for him for a long time. I've been waiting for him for a long time. David Kohl is with us, CEO of Symitri and TRUSTX. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I am,
Finally,
I, yes, well, what the audience doesn't know is the number of times you and I riff behind the scenes or walk around the city of London when I visit. And so this podcast was almost like we should just actually record the conversation, even though we've done it a lot.
I agree 100%. The last couple of years have been a roller coaster. Google changed the approach towards the privacy sandbox, the death of third-party cookie in Chrome, and the industry seems to have followed the narrative rather than taking a stand and following their objectives. How did you see it from your perspective?
You're first off, you're 100% spot on. It's almost as if Google is controlling. You said the word the narrative, and the industry is sort of just following whatever they say. So if you rewind back the tape to when Apple, which was the first big disruption, started pulling third party cookies and then later device IDs on the mobile side, it was certainly impactful. But when Google, oh my God, Google says it in Chrome, which is a larger part of the open web, but in the United States, it's less than half of the mobile side. Suddenly everybody jumped, oh my God, we're gonna lose addressability, we're gonna lose measurement, we're gonna lose attribution, frequency capping, like the sky is falling because Google said the sky is falling. Fast forward to this past July, and Google says, "Yeah, just kidding. We're not really we're not really doing that." And the pressure seems to have come off on a reality that we are moving into a world with less signal. We are moving into a world with fewer cookies, device IDs, etc. And regulation is although slower, regulation is in fact following. So yeah, we're witnessing exactly what you just described.
But why do you think is that? Is almost the usual refrain of the industry, always waiting until the last moment? And as Google has said, okay, no more death of third-party cookie for now, so everybody relaxed, ready to jump up again whenever it will approach a new decision.
Look, let's just look at the dynamics. Advertisers foundationally buy ads in order to get a return on that ad spend, whatever that means. Let's broadly call it performance, but I don't want to be purist that, like performance advertising is a category, but I want to talk about performance as an outcome of putting ads on page. And I understand from the marketer's point of view that the threat of an environment, a digital environment without any trackability, without any measurability, makes performance incredibly difficult. And the natural bias, if you're a brand, is to move your dollars into an environment where you have that easy round trip, easy targeting, easy verification, easy measurement. And of course, those are the major walled gardens. So you can understand that when the largest player in the ad tech ecosystem and the largest player in the browser system say we're taking out that foundational layer of measurement, where everyone freaks out. But I can't understand, especially in this country, in America, where I think Safari is about 35% of browsers and Apple mobile devices are more than 50% of devices, and those devices are largely offline. Browsers totally, and on the mobile devices, more than 50% of consumers have completely opted out, and of the other less than half, they're selectively opting in only to apps they trust. And so that was a little bit long winding road, but I understand why advertisers freaked out with Google. But what I don't understand is how can you leave half of the universe off your media plan and be okay with that, particularly the Apple universe. So yes, they're following the Google narrative, but I think inappropriately so.
but also lacking the wisdom or the long-term view of saying, okay, this will happen. Let's not pause on the thinking, on the planning, on the strategizing a future without a third-party cookie in Chrome. That's to me the because no doubt it is difficult, no doubt it's challenging, but pausing now just because Google postponed a decision, it doesn't seem to be very strategic.
Um, Let me frame it a little differently how I hope advertisers, and we haven't even talked about the publisher side yet, but let's stick on the brand side for a minute. Data, consumer data, customer insights, things you know about the people who either are current or prospective customers is truly each brand's competitive advantage. The data is their gold. And so one could talk about this technical problem in our industry, the deprecation of the identity infrastructure that we've become accustomed to as a reason advertisers should plan around it. But I want to put a different kind of catalyst into the framing, which is we live in an environment now where we've also become accustomed to giving away our data. It's not unusual for brands to either acquire a third party segment that's highly likely to be uh, performant for them, or to push their first party audiences into the bid stream and say, go buy these. Which means that the brand is taking their competitive intelligence and giving it away to companies who are in the business of taking that competitive intelligence, repackaging it, and reselling it to competitors. And so I think that we have two dynamics here. We have a signal loss problem juxtaposed with a willingness to flood too many signals. I think if we were focusing on the loss problem, it's hard to motivate folks who feel like, well, it's already there. Why am I bothering with it now? It could be forever before I have to worry about this. But instead, if we turn the narrative to why you're giving away your data, that's a valuable asset. Perhaps that creates a different catalyst. Perhaps this notion that your data is so valuable to you, maybe there's a better way to reach the consumers you're trying to reach, but without giving away that data. I think perhaps that narrative has more of a pressing uh, uh, value proposition to brands over the maybe I'll lose my signal in the future, maybe I won't.
This sounds like what inspired you with Symitri, founding Symitri.
It is exactly this problem. It was a two-sided problem. On the brand side, we see the effect of signal loss and the common practice of giving away data. And the publisher side, publishers we were near and dear to for the last 8 years of running TRUSTX, and I can get into that interesting dynamic shortly. But the publisher side had a slightly different dynamic, and that dynamic is also rooted in this problem of giving away data. For the last decade and a half, publishers have dropped pixels on their pages, and they've happily pushed data into the bid stream and said to the other side of the buy sell equation, hey, you guys figure it out on just by the audience you want to reach. But if you give away all your audience data and you tell the rest of the supply chain, David's of this, David's of that, or Alessandro's of this, or Alessandro's of that, why would anyone buy Alessandro for $5 when you can buy him for $1? And so you have the dual dynamic of this giving away data in order to transact that motivated us to build Symitri. The promise was we can drive performance for buyers, which will then result in higher CPM revenue for sellers. But because we built the business on this uncompromising privacy and data protection promise, buyers and sellers will avail their most private data to us, we hope, and will help both sides commensurate the transaction without them having to give away that data. That's the foundation of Symitri. And because we have that data, we can drive performance. We can do it at the speed and scale of programmatic, and we can also protect both sides from being sucked into the inevitable end that could be walled gardens forever, where buyers will have no leverage and sellers will have no revenue.
And how do you solve the issue of ID-less bids being deprioritized by the DSP? Not necessarily because they want to, but because they don't have perhaps historical data. They don't have visibility on what they are going to buy. So you're in between.
We are. So let's break the problem into current reality and potential future. The current reality, particularly given the change in Google's stance over the summer, is that the industry seems to be comfortable adopting what I'll call the extended ID technologies. And you know some of the majors. It's LiveRamp, it's UID2, it's ID5, and there's probably 5 or 10 others that are more commonly being used within the bid stream. And so you have an identity infrastructure that is still moving between buyer and seller. And I don't want to bash these identities. It's better than we used to have, right? They're encrypted. There's some control over those identities. They're not foolproof because in order for buyers or sellers to actually use those identities, endpoints need decryption keys. So they're not bulletproof, but they're better than a cookie in the clear. So the reality we have is that IDs are in fact flowing. Oh, you got a telephone call. It's probably Google calling saying, "What the hell are you guys talking about?" So you have this reality that IDs are actually in the bid stream. Let's start with that. And our view at Symmetry is I'm not going to tell you what to push in the bid stream and what not to, but there is an argument to be made that if all that was flowing through the bid stream were identifiers, you make it a little easier for buyers to reach the audiences they want to reach and sellers to display those audiences. And of course, all that measurement we talked about. Not necessarily a bad thing. Where we start to get to the crossing of the line, right? Where we're not just facilitating a transaction, we're informing the transaction in a way that um, is imbalanced, perhaps provides more power to one side than the other, is when, in addition to the blank identity, we're also passing attribute data. We're passing private information that a seller may have built up over time that for them is their gold. That's their secret sauce. It's what they know about that consumer that doesn't turn them in from an anonymous encrypted ID, but an anonymous encrypted ID with all kinds of value. And the same goes for the buyer. It's one thing to say, hey, I want to reach these 100,000 encrypted ramp IDs. It's another thing to say, oh, and by the way, these 100,000 ramp IDs have this, and this attribute that we know by our products and could be valuable to my competitor. And so, at least in today's reality, what Symmetry is advocating for is, do your thing if you want to. Make sure the ecosystem is comfortable buying and selling the way they're used to buying and selling. But keep your really private stuff out of the bid stream. Don't give away your gold. And that's what we can facilitate. We can keep your private data behind the firewall and provide value to you as buyer and you as seller, each individually, without ever combining, merging, reselling, or graphing any of that data. And that's our promise is give us access. We'll help you drive performance, we'll help you drive outcomes, and we'll do so in a way that protects that gold that is your competitive advantage.
What brought you to evolve to this position from TRUSTX?
This all started back in actually really 2021 when we saw the first breaks in the cookie chain with Apple, right? And the publishing community came to us as TrustX and said, "Hey, you guys have been really good to us. You're trying to solve problems for the premium open internet. Could you figure out how we as publishers could participate in a future without identity and in a future where we want to do a better job at protecting our gold, our data assets, but still ensure that we can participate in this thing called programmatic, which is where all the money is." It was like we have this tiny, tiny, narrow sliver that the publishing community was asking us to to try to create. I think we came up with a really novel solution. We partnered with a company called Akamai. I think a lot of people know about Akamai. They have two really powerful value propositions to the industry. They're known for some of the best digital security in the world. They're trusted by tens of thousands of companies to secure their networks, to secure their content, to secure their IP. So Akamai is known for that. And they're also known for this crazy fast, globally distributed edge network. And what Akamai did in as we were trying to figure out this solution is provide speed and security, which means we could experiment with the idea of doing real-time transaction data with the security that protects data for buyers and sellers. And so our early experiments um, showed that we could process on behalf of buyers and sellers totally private transactions at the speed and scale of programmatic advertising. Frankly, when our publishers saw the initial results, and we had a few brands on the brand side, and we're now remember we're wind the tape. We're talking about early days of is it cookieless or is it not? The group of our clients as TrustX said, "Holy shit, you guys got to make this bigger. You got to commercialize this," and that was the catalyst for ultimately spinning out between Akamai and TrustX, spinning out this technology and forming a new company called Symitri.
And is it your media owners, TRUSTX partners, members also using Symitri now? How do you see the move, the approach from the media side?
Publishers are very, very supportive of what we are doing. All our current beta publisher companies started initially as TrustX clients. I will say, and it's important to say, Symmetry, we own TrustX, we operate TrustX, but the product line that we are creating, we're calling it Prism. It's the Prism operating system. Prism deploys in TrustX, but also in other supply side and demand side technology companies. We are currently doing some beta testing with Media.net, with Index Exchange. We're talking to our friends at Criteo and Commerce Grid, and on the demand side, we've got a handful of DSP relationships in the works. Symmetry is meant to be integrated across the supply chain. You can't protect data and drive performance in a single SSP and be successful. So yes, we still operate the transparent and brand safe environment called TrustX, but Symmetry's Prism deploys across the supply chain.
I'm thinking about our past conversations, and I'm trying to connect the dots now. So the fact that, for example, media alliances are as successful as they could be only if their individual members will invest in the alliance and make the alliance ideally the single point of entry for that inventory. So if you then are selling on dozens of other channels and platforms the same inventory, it defeats the purpose of the alliance. Now, do you see the same with the use of Symitri, for example, where yes, I invest in this technology because I believe in protecting my data, and then maybe in parallel I'm selling on through other less safe, less secure channels.
It's a great question. So the alliance concept applies in our legacy TRUSTX world, and your observation is astute. Publishers provided in many cases some level of prioritization or preference for TrustX, but as we've talked about, they're also selling their inventory through all the major supply side exchanges. And in the early days of TrustX, I was under the illusion that it would actually be best for publishers if they only were to have sold their inventory through TrustX selfishly. That's what I wanted. And there is an economic argument for that. But I've come to realize that a small degree of programmatic competition actually is the best for publisher yield. So I think if we tune your comment about alliances strictly to the TrustX environment, in that case, because TrustX was our promise and our capabilities in that environment were primarily one of safety, one of transparency, one of accountability. But technologically, TrustX is no different than Index Exchange or Magnite or any other of the other SSPs. I think that your comment is correct.
But it's not just about technology, though. It's also about exclusivity, scarcity. The knowledge from the buyer side that that's the only point, that's the only door to high quality inventory. Because if then
Again,
I know that I can buy somewhere else for cheaper, what is it? Is it vodka?
yeah, it's 10:30 in the morning here in the United States and in New York, and when I knew I was hanging out with you,
Talking to me.
I knew I had to have something stiff.
Please.
In the SSP world, there's an argument to be made that that's accurate. If we were the only spot for premium inventory, we would we would have the leverage, we would have the power, that is that would have, I think, made all boats rise. But at the same time, just the way DSPs and SSPs operate, I don't think that reality ultimately would have panned out as good as the theory sounds. I think publishers having 10, 12, 15 connections into the supply exchanges, allowing reselling, very bad. I think they hurt themselves. But I do think that if there were maybe two or three. But my friend Chris Kane at Jounce Media was the one who educated me on this interesting dynamic that's counterintuitive, but probably accurate unless some foundational elements of the way SSPs and DSPs work were to change. Symmetry is a different animal, though. First off, Symmetry is not truly an alliance in the same way that TrustX is. Symmetry is a commercial performance marketing technology company that I believe will win because we will actually do everything we said. We will provide buyers a higher performant way to buy on the open internet. We will give buyers the opportunity to achieve the kinds of return on investment they see in the walled gardens, but across the scale and diversity, and by the way, much more cost efficient open internet. Right now, the buyers are almost they're getting sucked into the walled gardens in a way that is completely unhealthy in the long term. They will lose price leverage. If you only have three or four companies to buy in, they choose what the cost is, and that's the end of it. And there's a bit of this like historic crack cocaine. I don't want to knock them. Like Meta does an excellent job at driving results. If you put in $12 CPM and you get $18 of value out, who wouldn't buy that all day long? But that 12 starts to creep up to 13 and 14 and 15. And at some point, you're locked. What Symitri wants to do for buyers is give them that level of ROI, give them that level of put a couple of bucks in, get a couple of more bucks out, but across a much lot wider, diverse pool of inventory, and one where the leverage model is much more even. And of course, if we drive performance across the open internet for advertisers, we do so while not making them give away their data. Jesus, you put your data into Meta, forget it. Meta's the first thing they're doing is using that data for your competitor. We're giving them the opportunity to get performance without giving you away your data. And of course, if we drive performance, the recipient are open internet publishers who will start to see value from that in terms of higher CPMs and greater volume. So we win on the economics. We make a strong privacy and data protection promise, which is how we drive performance. The access to data that's not readily available across the open internet is how we do our special thing. But we're going to win on commercials.
You have a privileged position because with your TRUSTX hat on, you're telling buyers buy in a high quality environment. With your Symitri hat on, you're saying buy in the open internet. Do you see a difference in that? What would you suggest to, I put it on in you on the spot now.
So
How would you suggest about the two between the
yeah,
two?
yeah. I do not want to discount the trust that we have earned in 8 years of running TrustX. Our brand in TrustX is bigger than our business in TrustX, frankly, because our brand represents trust, safety, quality, accountability. And by the way, that drives performance. We've earned our street cred.
And that's exactly what makes Symmetry, I think, a success at the beginning. But it's the credibility, the body of work, what you have built during these years that are projected also in this new venture.
Correct. Symmetry's catalyst, like our little kick, is the trust that we have out of the gate. It's actually very refreshing. We make a phone call to a brand, an agency, of course our publishers, and our hello is remember us from TrustX? Well, we're now Symmetry. We also have TrustX, but we're now Symmetry. And the opening out of the gate is, oh, I believe you. I trust that when you say what you're going to do, you're going to do it. When we say if you avail us to your most private and valuable data, that we're not going to share it. We're not going to merge it. We're not going to combine it. We're not going to graph it. We work for you. We are your service provider. We're your data processor. Everything we do is done in a way that keeps your data private. And because of the access you give us, our algorithm, our real-time capabilities will enable you to do business better across the open internet. They believe us. And we've earned that trust. And now it's our responsibility to sustain and to fulfill that trust going forward. You mentioned something before, and I want to be very clear about it. We are not the media monetization partner like your SSP or DSP is. So Symmetry, yes, we will operate across the breadth of the open internet. And if as a buyer you choose to buy through Magnite, OpenX, Media.net, Index Exchange, or TrustX, you are choosing a supply side exchange through which you wish to do business, and on publishers who are connected to those exchanges. We leave the buyer to make those decisions. Our promise is wherever you choose to buy, we will keep your data private and enable you to get the performance you deserve on the open internet, and as a publisher, the revenue you deserve without having to give away your data.
David, now you are in ad tech. What did you do before? What will you do after?
I spent a little more than 25 years in management consulting. I worked for three of the big four: KPMG, PwC, and EY. Only Deloitte. Maybe I'll go work for them when I retire. That way I
After.
could do all the big four. Um, Almost my entire tenure in management consulting was in media and entertainment, in our media and entertainment practice, but serving the largest media companies in the world. I mostly dealt with the sell side, clients like NBC, Disney, Viacom before it was Paramount. Uh, some of the print publications that went digital, and I also had clients at Group M and various different parts of IPG. So a fairly broad level of experience in traditional media and in digital media. And the catalyst for kind of leaving that world and moving starting TrustX, it was around that early time of programmatic 2011, 12, where largest most premium media companies were saying this programmatic thing, holy shit, it's killing us. I think it was Jeff Zucker who said sometime in like around that time, we're trading traditional dollars for digital dimes. Well, my clients were feeling that, and I was scratching my head as a consultant. We're supposed to solve this problem. I'm thinking, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do about it. And it was in that moment of multiple large scale premium media conglomerates saying this programmatic thing's a piece of shit for us, uh, where I came up with this concept of TrustX, of couldn't we like just cordon off the best companies in the world and say, buy them here and they're worth every penny. And so that was my like transition into this world. I loved consulting, super smart people, really interesting clients. But what we ended up creating in TrustX was like how do you solve the same problem for 50 companies at once? And this was the outlet. So I think that answers the first part of your question, is what I did before.
And now comes the ones I'm most interested in.
I really
Surprise
love this
us.
industry. Yeah, I really love this industry. I think I'd like to work a little less hard. Maybe do some advisory work in my retirement whenever that comes. You may also know I'm a pilot. I own an airplane,
I
and
know very well.
yes, and I
I haven't
love
tried.
flying.
I haven't tried it yet.
You've got come to New York. The ride is
Yes, you
yours.
tell
I'll
me
take you
every
around the
time.
city.
And then
Eh,
we could record an episode
yeah, we could do
literally
an
on
episode
air.
in the airplane. Yeah, I have to have the autopilot on though.
Yes, please.
I will fly more. Um, I've thought about becoming a flight instructor. I'm really big on mentorship. I take bringing younger people up in whatever they do. I love doing that. I feel strongly about it. I try to do that at our company. We're always looking at mentorship programming for our younger talent, and flight instruction could be like a totally different way of doing the same thing. Young aspiring pilots. I've been lucky enough to have taken the sons and daughters of some of my contemporaries flying, and one of them went into the aviation industry, and I just love that. He told me, like, you inspired me. I became a private pilot, and now he works for I think he's in operations at JetBlue doing scheduling, which is kind of like programmatic advertising.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this was the hidden agenda of this episode of Not Just Hats. Was launching the David Kohl Flying School. Kohl. No,
Fly David.
that's exactly. Let's close. with your vision on the future of media. And I'm not talking from an ad tech perspective, I'm talking about quality content, quality environments, but more than anything, positive contribution to society and democracy.
I am a firm believer in pendulums. I've seen in the 30 and change years that I've been working that uh, businesses, industries, not just media, but all over the place, swing. I think we are, unfortunately, at a pretty low point in things like professional journalism, news, and the dominance that a very small handful of platform companies, social platform companies have. And I suspect that politics and the various regimes around the world that have swung our politics to the far right will actually have a silver lining if we can get through the next 4 years. Um, it's a whole other story. I'm not doing that on this podcast, but
Asterisk.
yes. But I think that we will actually see a reaction, and the pendulum. I am optimistic that we will begin to see a swing back into quality, into bona fide professional journalism, um, content that isn't just user created, but professionally created. No, not an instance, not a oh my God, what happened? But I think I think if I look at the cycle of where we've come, we're ready for the reversal. And just as slow and insidious as some of the change happened over the last decade to decade and a half, it won't be dramatic, but we will look back in some time in the future and look at the destruction that the last 10 to 15 years have created in professional media, in psychology, in our attitudes, in how in the what's the word the polarity of our society, and we will come back. And I'm optimistic that I may have played a small role in that catalyst.
I like this conclusion. Thank you very much, David. Let's hope that the pendulum is inverting the course already. If not, we'll be waiting for it, working for it, and waiting also for you to come back and tell us more about the next chapters in the Symitri journey.
I
Thank
look
you,
forward
David.
to it. Alessandro, always great to spend a little time with you, and I look forward to the next time we see each other.